Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. Megan Roberts is off today. We begin tonight in Yukon, where the territory's Minister of Mines says there is definitely a leak at Victoria Gold's Eagle mine. That's the mine that had a devastating heap leach landslide this spring. The company managing the site built a new storage pond, but now that pond is losing toxic water. John Stryker says they don't know where the leak is, but they're working to find it. It's estimated as much as 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water has leaked so far. Stryker says a treatment plant is being used to neutralize the cyanide in the water. The problem is copper, also toxic, is being left behind.
They're using copper to get rid of the cyanide or destruct the cyanide, but then it's leaving this total copper in the water, and so they need to build a small settling pond right beside the water treatment plant. That's happening over the next couple of weeks. It's not a big pond, but it's a way to let the water settle.
All of this work is connected to an investigation launched by receiver PricewaterhouseCoopers. Patching the leak hinges on emptying everything from the damaged pond, but storage capacity is critically limited at the site, so now crews need to build yet another containment pond. Some tense moments today in Hay River when RCMP asked residents in the Pine Crescent area to shelter in place. At around 7:30 this morning, police said they were dealing with a situation around the area of 553. No details about what was happening were provided. The all clear was given earlier this afternoon. Police say a number of people were taken into custody and an investigation continues. The Nunavut Housing Corporation is looking at longer-term options for those displaced by a fire in Iqaluit earlier this week. That fire burned down an apartment building called Noble House on Wednesday. There were 36 families living there, according to the government of Nunavut, and now they're facing the fact they're going to have to start again from scratch.
I kind of knew that it was gonna be gone.
Akpeek is now in a hotel with no idea of when she'll be moved into a new home. She says she waits for her 4 children to fall asleep before she lets herself cry.
I was just mostly worried about the girls, how they felt, because they don't really understand.
Now, despite the tragedy, Akpeek says she's grateful for the support of her community. She was able to pick up some donated items from the warming shelter the city opened. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Residents of Fort Smith are breathing a sigh of relief tonight. The Northwest Territories Power Corporation says the power supply there is now stable. The community has been dealing with power outages over the past week, and people had been asked to limit how much power they used. Last Friday, some neighborhoods were without power for as long as 7 hours. The problem stemmed from the backup generators the town has been relying on since 2023, when the Tulston hydro plant started undergoing a massive overhaul. NTPC says the outages were because of strain on the generators, as they're not usually used for long periods of time.
They've been put under a fair bit of pressure, a lot more operating hours than normal. But prior to the overhaul starting, we invested a lot of time and effort into making sure that those generators were in the best possible shape. And the extended outage of Tulston certainly has to be considered a bit of a factor into why we're encountering some issues.
Prendergast says the Tulston Hydro Dam is expected to return to service within the next month. Well, meanwhile, in Nunavut, parts of Baker Lake have been without power for the past 2 days. That outage forced the Hamlet office, school, and several businesses to close. Crews from Kula Lake Energy Corporation were delayed making it to the community because of bad weather. The corporation says a blown fuse was found to be the issue. As of this afternoon, most of the power has been restored, and crews continue to investigate any remaining outages. A constitutional lawyer says the recent Court of Appeal decision on Kula Lake's caribou conservation plan is one more in a trend of decisions from the Canadian courts. Luke Carroll has that story.
A constitutional lawyer says the Court of Appeal's decision to side with Kula Lake on a dispute involving Indigenous law shows how far the Canadian courts have come in respecting treaties. The dispute was around Kula Lake using traditional knowledge to come up with a caribou management plan, and essentially whether it had sovereignty of the area that was in question. Ryan Beaton is a Vancouver-based lawyer.
The way in which the court reached this decision was to accept that Indigenous laws should be respected and applied here. And that's part of an interesting trend in Canadian courts recognizing the application of specific Indigenous laws and Indigenous legal orders in Canada.
Beaton says this could help the community on future treaty disputes with the Northwest Territories government.
It's definitely in a line of precedents that make the next argument for application of Indigenous law a little easier.
The NDPT government says it's considering the decision before deciding on next steps. Beaton says he thinks it's unlikely this goes before the Supreme Court, as the issue seems settled. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
It's been 5 years since the first case of an unknown pneumonia-like sickness were found in China. We didn't know it, but it was the start of what would become the COVID-19 pandemic. Since then, for a lot of us, getting sick is just a part of life that we've learned to accept. But as Gabrielle Plonka shows us, getting COVID or the flu is something not everyone can easily handle, and that has some people feeling left behind.
Even though COVID-19 and influenza numbers were widespread in the Yukon this year, health officials say this was the mildest flu season since the peak in 2021. Most of us have forgotten about precautions like masking or avoiding gatherings. But this new normal is dangerous for people who are still at risk of severe illness.
It's very difficult to exist in space where other people don't have the same safety concerns as you. And so sometimes it means a lot of self-advocacy, which means folks who are spoonies are doing a lot of work to protect themselves. And then when they know they're in spaces that they can't because folks aren't going to listen or be receptive to things like wearing a mask, then they really have to avoid those spaces, which keeps our disabled further isolated.
Rathlin runs a support group for people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. Some of its members still mask and avoid gatherings, and that's been socially isolating. The Yukon's chief medical officer encourages those precautions, but says isolation can become its own risk factor.
Keep your vaccines up to date and do the things that you feel like you need to do in order to protect yourself to the degree that you can, and recognize where some of the things that you may need to do actually may put you at a little bit of risk, right? Socializing is important. It's really, really important that we not become socially isolated.
But Rathlin says constantly asking peers to be careful is exhausting.
There's a lot of self-advocacy that has to go into it, a lot of putting up boundaries with folks, which can be really uncomfortable.
Rathlin says small acts of kindness go a long way, like checking in on your disabled friends during the cold winter months, including them in activities, and offering to wear a mask. Gabrielle Plonka, CBC News, Whitehorse.
While cases of flu are leveling out in Yukon, Nunavut's chief public health officer says it's on the rise in Baker Lake. The Department of Health says there are 12 reported cases of type A influenza in the community. The spread of the virus has prompted some places to close, including the arena, co-op store, and the soup kitchen. The chief public health officer says even though cases are rising, the department has not declared an outbreak.
So we haven't declared an outbreak of flu in Baker Lake, but we recognize that it is the flu season and people might be experiencing flu, COVID, and other respiratory illnesses.
Now, despite not declaring an outbreak, the Department of Health is providing support to local nursing staff.
The Kanwipita National Inuit Health Survey team is going to every community in Nunavut, speaking to Inuit about their health and wellness. And every answer will help us as Inuit determine our own priorities for a healthier future. Together, we will answer the question, Kanwipita, how are we? Find out when we're coming to your community. Learn more at qnihs.ca.
Alcoholics Anonymous. We're here to help. For more information, visit aa.org and download the Meeting Guide app.
Earth is our collective home. That makes us all family. As family, we strive to love and protect each other. Diversity of species is our strength. We are all connected. We survive and thrive together. We celebrate many things this season and make many choices. Taking care of our family should be the easiest. We're in this together.
Being there means being here. Russian forces, they want it badly. It's just a fraction of the mess here in Port aux Basques. To witness, to listen, to share. I'm so sorry. I do worry about them. Adrian Arsenault reports on CBC News, stream free.
We're often drawn to people who have something we want in ourselves.
But it doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
It's been 4 days since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his pending resignation, and now attention is turning to the bid to replace him as leader. The rules are out, but who's in the race? Ashley Burke has the latest.
Hi, ready? Another high-profile minister now out of the running to replace Justin Trudeau.
I was really torn about this decision because, to be frank, I think that our chances were really, really high.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says she wants to be the first woman to lead the Liberal Party, but can't.
Canadians are anxious when they hear President-elect Trump saying and restating again his threats. So I decided to put my country first, and I decided to do my job.
That's why another minister who's now facing calls to reconsider already bowed out too.
I will be solely focused on the real economic threat.
As for those entering the race, a source says former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is expected to launch his campaign next week. And BC's former Premier Christy Clark told CBC's The House she's considering it too, but wishes there was more time.
We're looking at the rules now before I make a final decision, but I think, we can make this work in the timeline that we've got.
Last night, the Liberal Party released a video setting the date and rules for the race to become the next leader. The entrance fee for candidates is $350,000, and registered Liberals voting are now limited to Canadian citizens and permanent residents, a change made to address concerns about foreign interference.
I am very confident in the processes and assurances that have been given to me, that process will be one that ensures that only people who should be voting and people who we would want to see participating in a Canadian democratic process will be participating in that process.
Two relatively unknown candidates have already said they're running. Others who want the job have to declare it within the next 2 weeks. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Statistics Canada's latest job numbers are out, and in December, the Canadian economy added more jobs than anyone expected. So many, it pushed the employment rate up for the first time in 2 years. The CBC's Nisha Patel has that story.
Awesome, you're all done with your application?
Hundreds of job seekers showed up at this Toronto restaurant's job fair. The Ballroom Bowl is opening a new location and needs to hire 126 staff.
We are hiring all positions for hourly team members for front of house and back of house. So hosts, servers, bartenders, bussers, line cooks, dishwashers, and prep cooks.
Compared to this time last year, job creation in Canada is surprisingly strong.
Thank you.
The economy added 91,000 new positions last month.
2 seconds, you're going to be with Ian at 1.
The biggest monthly gain in 2 years. The unemployment rate fell to 6.7%.
This is what we've been saying for most of the last 6 months, that we think we were past the worst in terms of the pressure on the economy from high interest rates and high inflation.
This economist says that means after months of interest rate cuts, the Bank of Canada could soon pause.
The Bank of Canada is going to take a long look at the end of this month as to whether they have to keep cutting interest rates. At this point, we're still leaning to the probability that they'll trim rates one more time in January by a quarter, but there's a lot of information to go before that decision.
Tariffs will make our country rich.
Still, there's great uncertainty ahead. Donald Trump has threatened steep tariffs on Canadian goods. If he follows through, economic growth and jobs could take a hit. Back at the restaurant, Alex Austin Boyd is trying his luck. He's been looking for work for a few months.
I mean, obviously, things are getting tighter with the, food's costing more, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's also been, I think, more job openings than ever recently.
Do you have your resume, dear?
He and the other job seekers here remain hopeful they'll find work soon.
Awesome.
Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
There's growing concern about the safety of personal information belonging to Canadian children. Hundreds of schools across Canada and the U.S. have been hit by a major cyber attack, and data belonging to both staff and students may have been leaked. As Deanna Sumanek-Johnson reports, it's part of a troubling pattern.
Toronto father Jack Amendolia was sharing his concerns about an increasing number of cyber attacks at his son's school board when he got an email about a new breach. A major cyber incident involving PowerSchool, the application used by many school boards across North America to store a range of student information.
It could have been addresses and phone numbers, and so then they know, a child, a gender, an age, where that person lives.
This breach, affecting hundreds of thousands of families across the country, is the latest in a string of high-profile cybersecurity incidents hitting Canadian schools. Last month, Pembina Trails School Division in Winnipeg was hit by a cyber attack that, among other things, compromised personal information of students and paralyzed email and phone systems.
For us, that basically shut down everything we use, computers, PA systems, attendance online, there was no internet.
Gone are the days of signed paper forms. Information about everything from medical history to the names of people who are allowed to pick children up are submitted online. And all that makes schools and information about children prized prey for cyber criminals.
These are fresh identities. They take an address, a phone number, and a name, and can create a synthetic social insurance number and try to apply for things like loans online.
School boards or parents can also be asked for ransom money. Experts say one silver lining is cyber attacks often result in better security, like two-step authentication. Ween suggests parents push back if they're asked to provide information that seems excessive.
Limiting the information and where you put the information and what information you give out is key, and asking tough questions.
Something Amendolia intends to do as parents and educators grapple with how to bring schools into the digital age while safeguarding kids' data. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a shortage of bishops in the Diocese of the Arctic. It's now down to only one, and it's looking for more. 2 bishops retired at the end of December and another quit. The sole bishop of the diocese lives in Saluit, Nunavik. She's encouraging people in the clergy to put their names forward for the job.
So it's through nominations. Any clergy, priest can be nominated for bishop.
There will be elections for bishops in Winnipeg in May, and people from all over the Arctic are expected to be there. Well, some Whitehorse High School students will be getting the chance to grow their artistic skills. CSSC Mercier is introducing a new arts program for 10th graders. It's expected to be in place next year. The French language school currently has limited options when it comes to art. The school is now aiming to offer daily classes from January till June 2026, including theater, dance, music, sculpture, and more.
Performing arts touches a different demographic than, outdoor programs, and it allows a lot of kids to discover themselves. It helps them build self-confidence and be more sure of themselves. It helps with their speaking skills and their social skills, especially in high school when it's kind of like a difficult time in life. We're not going to sugarcoat that one, but I think performing arts really gives an outlet to kids. It helps them connect with other people that are also going through the same struggles, and it helps them build empathy. especially because they can put themselves in other people's shoes.
The school is expecting 16 students to sign up for the program in the first year, but Tal Jay-Z says the eventual goal is to offer it to a larger group and bring it outside of Whitehorse. Well, have you heard of Ski-Mo? I had not until today. Short for ski mountaineering, it involves skiing up the side of a mountain before navigating a downhill course. And it's making its Olympic debut at the 2026 Winter Games in Italy. Some mountaineers showed CBC News how they're training in hopes of nabbing a spot at the Games. Have a look.
Let's go, let's go. It's a pretty punishing sport. Work so hard and it's really painful, but you get a lot of reward with that too. I'm Emma Cook-Clark. I'm here at Sunshine to do some Ski-Mo training with my teammate Kylie. Let's go. Ski mountaineering to me is two different things. One is the recreational component where people backcountry ski and go all over the mountains and have adventures, and the other side is ski mountaineer racing or Ski-Mo, and that's what we practice and compete at. Up, 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 up. We go uphill with skins on our skis. So this is the skin that gives you traction for going up the hill. It glides forward, but it doesn't glide backwards. It's actually made of mohair, which is a goat fur. Sticks to our bases. You press it on. It is quite a lot steeper. Some of the portions are stairs, or steeper than stairs. We'll transition and we'll put the skis on our back, and then you do a boot pack where you are basically running up the hill. If you've ever run uphill for any reason, you'll feel that burn, that lactic acid. We're feeling that kind of from 30 seconds after the start till we end. Yeah, Kylie! And then we ski down. I feel like the downhill is often hanging on for dear life, to be honest, because you gain a lot more time in the uphill, and then you try to win that top transition and get into the gates first, and then you just try to hold your position to the line. Yo! Races vary from 3 minutes to multi-day, and for the first time this sport will be in the Olympics in 2026, and those disciplines are just the shorter ones. There's 2 Olympic disciplines. One is the co-ed relay and one is the sprint, and they're very short, 3 to 5 minutes in length. And then the original sport and the third discipline is called the individual race, and it's about the length of a half marathon and 1,300 to 1,500 meters. So that one is the more adventurous version. It's not in the Olympics this time around, but we're hoping the next Olympics they include that one. Oh yeah. It's a really special sport that combines a lot of different disciplines. Just the love of being outdoors in our amazing Canadian wilderness, the adventurous nature of it, combined with working really hard. I'm an endurance athlete and I love using my body, but I also love being able to combine that with having to be mentally really engaged, whether it's route finding or managing avalanche conditions or working to your absolute limit. I got into Ski-Mo about a decade ago. I was a speed skater on the Canadian national team, and I retired in my late 20s and just loved training and loved being outside, and discovered a passion for racing and competing in a more natural environment. I was really attracted to the freedom of the sport after spinning laps like a hamster for many years. The wildness of the mountains really called to me growing up in Calgary. There hasn't ever been a World Cup in North America. This is a really European-dominated sport, much like Nordic skiing or alpine skiing in the 80s. Our top national team, there's about 4 women and 4 men, will spend majority of the winter in Europe because we have to qualify an Olympic spot for Canada. We have no automatic spots, so we have to qualify spots through World Cup participation and ranking. I think any sport, but especially new sports to the Olympics, are passion driven. We have very little monetary funding and support, and so we all do it because there's nowhere else we'd rather be than skinning up a hill most days. Earth recorded its hottest year ever in 2024.
Weather monitoring agencies say the jump was so big that the planet temporarily passed a major climate threshold. And many scientists see that increase as a tipping point. They say that if temperatures continue to stay that high, we could experience intensifying wildfires, droughts, floods, hurricanes, and storm surges. Last year's temperature broke the previous record set in 2023 by just over 0.1 degrees Celsius. In the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, 196 countries agreed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above that of pre-industrial times. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a statement saying leaders must act now to avoid a climate catastrophe. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Those are some mild temperatures out there, above 0 in Whitehorse. I saw -7 up in the north of the NWT, -8 in Kingite. Those are some mild days out there, especially for January. Take care out there this weekend. We'll see you again on Monday.
On your marks.
Get set. Go! Every second counts!
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
I'm a nanny.
Like Mary Poppins?
It's like the Force. Sorry, have you seen Star Wars?
No. Very predictable, you know that?
I'm hardly predictable. I'm deadly serious. Is it okay with you?
I am enjoying myself. Thank you for the invitation.
How can any of this be fair?
Now, you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
Russian scheme here.
Shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job?
Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Stream anytime. CBC News.
This is CBC North on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
I've been waiting 8 years for this moment. It feels like magical. I'm still like pinching myself.
Bakers, now you are finally here.
You're gonna regret this.
You tried to kill my son.
You're the one who tried to kill him. It's all my fault.
Coronation Street. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I want to have a brew.
Hey, let's go, man.
You're one of my favorite interviewers.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.